So this talk is called Bad Ideas and Worst Practices, and there's a lot of ground cover, so let's get started. So first of all, a message from the sponsors. Copy and paste is not a design pattern. How the fuck do you sleep at night? So, bad ideas. Let's get started straight off the list, first one. Okay, moving on. Worst practices. Are there any questions? I'm just kidding, mostly. So, who am I? My name is Luka Kladarić. I'm a recovering PHP-holic. I have over 10 years experience of professional web development that includes ASP, PHP, JS, Python, and various others. Some of that time was spent like this. But the last 3 years I spent at DeviantArt, a mega-scale web property, a social network before the term social network existed. And for the past year, I've been the CTO at Hitlist, a New York-based travel tech startup. So it's a mobile app for iOS and Android. Please get it. Thank you. So you can say that I have a lot of experience breaking things. So what are bad ideas and worst practices? They are anti-pattern, so things that you really should not be doing. They come from a lack of skill, experience, and insight to recognize the bad solution, and from a lack of will to find a better one. And they're usually the byproduct of cowboy coders. Cowboy coders are people who have never worked in teams where there is a person above them who knows more than them. So, straight off the bat, one of the biggest of the bad ideas is trusting user input. So trusting user input means that you ask a user to enter a number and you expect them to enter a number. And the most famous of all bad ideas in trusting user input is SQL injection. Injection in general, SQL is the most famous flavor of it. SQL injection is when you put user input straight into the SQL query, trusting them to enter a number, and they go and do a wild thing like enter a quotation mark, space, or 1 equals 1, and then that ends up as being the lower query, which is definitely not what you want. Stuff like this can be used to bypass logins, permission checks, leak sensitive information, extract user data, extract entire databases, and the possibilities are endless. So, no. There are many flavors of injection. Shell shock is the most famous current one. So this broke like 10 days ago, where Bash, a famous Unix shell, is allowing people to define environment variables which contain executable code and execute them. So I'm not saying Bash user is the user who actually uses the shell, but applications and so on. And people have discovered a way to inject executable code into processes run by other people. So in this code sample, vulnerable is not something that should be echoed, but it is. This currently affects the majority of the internet. So there are various other unintentional or malicious exploits from unchecked user input, and they all work in kind of the same way, where people submit data and it alters the context of that data. It stops being data and becomes commands. So, number 2 is trusting the middleware. Middleware is anything from you and the thing that you think you're talking to. So this could be, if you're doing web apps, it could be browsers, it could be client apps, it could be protocols, proxies, anything that is between you two. So one of my favorite hacks, this was probably about 10 years ago, but it's still, like, it's very rare, but it still happens. So a website sets a cookie and just sets user ID equals something. Cookies are what you use to say, when you come back to a website for the second request, you say, hey, I'm that guy from 5 seconds ago. So instead of doing something smart, they're just saying user ID equals this guy, and I come back and I say, this is me, and the app recognizes me and executes stuff in my context. So I wonder what happens if I change the ID. What you should be doing with cookies is store as little as possible into them, definitely encrypt and sign them to protect against tampering, and people will tamper with them, as evidenced by this. So this is a game that I was playing more than a couple of years ago, and they did exactly this. So there was a guy that had this sword that I really wanted, so I found out their user ID, I logged in as them simply by changing the cookie, I sold their stuff, and then I bought it as my actual account. Profit. So make sure your cookies are safe. Don't expect apps to work for you. They don't. They work for the user. They work for the person who's clicking on them. They tolerate. So another example from the same game. I'm using examples that are 10 years old because they're a lot easier to explain, but this stuff still happens today. It's just the line has moved slightly, not too far. So this game had like 4 properties to your character, and you had a certain number of points, and then you had some spare points to distribute. And they had read-only fields and a button to distribute these points. So once the number reached 0, you couldn't increment it anymore, and so on. And I made the mistake of putting too much into one of them, and I wanted to redistribute, and the app wouldn't let you go back, only distribute new ones. So what could possibly go wrong with this? Remember, this is way before like web developer tools or anything like that allowed you to edit a page directly. This was in Internet Explorer. So today, this would be trivial, but before then, we used some proxies and stuff to alter the HTML in transit. So first thing, this is a buddy of me playing around with this. So the first thing we did was just give us 1,000 of everything, and that didn't actually work. They expected it. But what is it that they expected? They expected people to enter more than they should have. So how were they checking it? They probably checked that like the sum of all of them isn't more than you deserve. So what if one of them is a negative number? And that actually worked. They were literally checking that the sum of all 4 wasn't greater than you deserve. So, and they weren't checking individual anomalous values, or that the individual values went down. So this worked, and the character was very strong. It had high dexterity, high constitution, and low intelligence. Intelligence was used only in one formula in the entire system, and it was in a fraction on both sides. So the fact that it was negative had no effect. So this was, the sum effect of this was literally 440, 300, 300, and a full 1,000. So that was one of the quickest climbs to the top and one of the quickest falls down when the guy realized what we did and people started complaining because we were #1 within 5 minutes. So this stuff today, like you could easily edit. So the point of this is, this used to be read-only. I changed it to blah blah, and then I could enter it in the browser and do whatever I want. This is something that you can do with developer tools today, or you can run JavaScript straight into like your own JavaScript right inside someone else's page and so on. But this shows that you, like literally anything that you send to the browser and you expect them to repeat back under certain rules, you should not trust that because people will do that. So I have successfully used in-transit or in-browser tampering to obtain an expenses-covered invitation to a sporting event on a different continent. I didn't actually use my real data and I didn't actually use it, but I could have. Get to the top of the leaderboard in 5 minutes, that was the game. So we were playing for months and we were number 140 or something like that, and then in 5 minutes, a completely new character, we bumped it to the top. I've used this approach to buy stuff from Croatia or have it shipped to Croatia when it wasn't on the supported countries list. Often you'll have like sign up from or ship to, and the dropdown just doesn't have Croatia. And the funny thing is, it's not just printing labels. It's not just, oh, ship this to Croatia when you really don't want to support shipping to Croatia. but it's also selling to Croatia, because if the country isn't on the drop-down, the credit card won't go through because it uses the credit card, like the billing details, the address, and if you have the wrong country, then it just doesn't work. This makes it work. I've actually used the credit card in systems where they didn't want to support it. I've used it to pay less for goods or services because some forms send the value, the total sum that you're supposed to pay back to themselves. So you just edit like $100 down to 10, and you pay the $10, but the system thinks you paid the whole order. And I've used it to get better air travel prices. Now, they're too smart to let you edit the actual price, but if you tamper with the cookies, you can convince them that you're from a different territory, different territories have different prices and so on. And you'll notice that prices go up if you search for a long time. Just tampering with cookies or just deleting them makes the price go down. So, never, ever, ever, ever trust anything that may have originated outside your system. This means that you should actually not trust anything that is not under your direct control. If you have services that are internal and they get hacked, then you could get poisoned through, by association. Someone could convince a sibling system to give you false data. So, the third big point that I wanted to talk about was passwords. So, say you have this kind of situation where Joe is the admin, but he has 2 accounts, and he uses the admin password for both. And then Mo uses his own name as the password, and then Wilma is kind of in love with Mo, so she uses the same password. So if you store it like this in the database, it's really cool, because when people forget their password, you can just email it to them. But don't do that. When you hear of password leaks, like hundreds of thousands of passwords leaked from some social network you've never heard of, it's not that someone, it's not that they did everything right and someone still got it. It's that they did this, and this is very, very, very wrong. So the answer to this is, do you really need the plain text password to know when someone's given you the correct password? You don't. You just need to transform it in a way that can be later compared, but you can't get the original form from it, and that's called hashing. So we use MD5, which is old now, and you shouldn't actually use it, but it's a dead simple example. And there are plenty of hacking tools around, so that's fun. So if you just hash the password, you can't really, like this 21232F, this, you can't really use that and come up with what was the original password, which was admin. But you see that admin and Joe have the same hash, and so do Mo and Wilma. So if you actually enter 2123 blah 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 into MD5 cracking tools, they will immediately come back with admin because it's a known password. So what did they do? They use something called rainbow tables, which are pre-generated hashes of everything you could possibly think of, and they just look it up. So they get the value immediately. The cost of hacking this is 0. And also, you can also brute force stuff that isn't in rainbow tables. You just iterate and get it. You try every possible value, and eventually you get it. So because you have the same hash used by 4 different accounts, 2 different hashes, it makes sense to go after that one because you will get access to 2 accounts. So what can we do about that? First of all, this is really bad because literally the 21232 is, everyone knows that's admin. So you do something called salting, which is you add a value to the thing that you're hashing, preferably a value that only you know. So if we add salted before the password, you see that the 4 accounts still share 2 hashes, but it's no longer the publicly known hash for admin. And these don't actually come up in the couple of cracking tools that I've tried. But they're still bad because people still have shared hashes. And this can actually be used if you just take a look at the most common passwords on the planet. There's like lists published all the time. And you check, if you get a really big user base, you can figure out that, this password is the most common. It's probably like God or 12345 or whatever. So you really need per record unique salts. So here in a very trivial example, we use the string salted and we use the username. And you now see that the password, that the hashes are no longer the same for Admin and Joe and for Mo and Wilma. And the result of this is one of the MD5 cracking tools that I've tried. And you can see that Admin, Mo, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are immediately recognized, and the others aren't. Now, that doesn't mean they're actually secure, it's just that they're not already generated rainbow tables. But this stuff, don't literally do this. This is just do something with passwords, which leads me to the next point. Number 4 is inventing your wheel, your own wheel. It's a surefire recipe for ending up on this list, that's to reinvent something that already exists, something that smart people have spent a lot of time building, and you ignore that and you go and build your own. So the password stuff, most languages and frameworks today have some sort of hashing library that would help you do the right thing, so use that. Don't do MD5 salted. So inventing your own wheel, like what? Like rolling your own ID generation system for the database. So say you're going to have hundreds of thousands of users, databases have a way of generating these IDs. So you say, here's the user, and it says, this is user number 1. Here's the user, this is user number 2. But no, you go and you invent an entirely new generation system for the database when you have a single database, nothing special. Which is, okay, but then you go and do a talk about it. At EuroPython 2014, you talk about problems with inserting a new record with the ID field and race conditions, which is completely insane. And then you suggest that the better solution is inserting a random ID number, hoping it works, and if it doesn't, catching the duplicate key error and simply retrying with a new random number. I mean, this shit is mind-blowing. Like, I sat there in the audience and I had no words for this. Databases have been generating IDs since before you heard of databases. Leave Brittany alone. So, how to not end up on this list or a list like this? Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. Show them what you're working on constantly. Listen to them when they tear it apart, because they're probably doing it for a good reason. And then do it again. Do it better, make it stronger, faster. Questions, for real this time. I'll repeat the question, just. It's not like, oh, the question, right, sorry. The question is, would you do the prices thing to a small company? In my defense, this was a long time ago before I had to pay rent and I had a lot of spare time and, you know, it was fun to do. I wouldn't do it at all. You know, some people today don't pay for their tram tickets. I do. When you reach a point when you can buy something, like, if you can't afford it, don't buy it. So today, no, I wouldn't do it to anyone. I wouldn't go and hack. Like, I would exploit if they made an actual weakness. So if they messed up, like you have promo codes, and someone screws up and wants to do 50% on a single product and does a code that works 50% across all, that's user error. That's not like a hack. And they advertise the price, and if it works, law says that, you know, they have to respect it. But I wouldn't go actually hacking for prices today. MD5, there's a bunch of hashing algorithms, and the point is, really today, if you're just rolling something to get started, you know, use the whatever latest SHA-2 or whatever. Don't use MD5 because it's probably broken and easily brute forced. But stuff like there's bcrypt for PHP. I know we use that a bit. Today, I don't know. I use Django. I don't even care. I know that it has it solved, so I use what everyone else on the planet uses. So when they hack it, everyone is equally screwed, and the fix is going to come immediately, and I'm going to roll it out. So you're talking about when a user registers and enters their password, how do you store it in the database? I've always gone with encrypting it in the application and sending hashes to, because for logging in, you just need to know that it's the same one. You don't need to decrypt it. So I would go with encrypting in the app and giving the database. You know, the whole point is that the database can be stolen and the data is worthless. Yeah, I really, so the question is, what are my thoughts on the database triggered callbacks? And I really wanted to add this in, but it's just, so on the talks at EuroPython, we started discussing things like you insert something into the database, and then the fact that you inserted it runs some code that is not in the database or triggers like a callback. The guys at PHP Day last year in Verona, the guy that was talking about Postgres was saying that he can uncache stuff straight from Memcache and Redis when you update the record and stuff like that. I really, really like that. That's really, no, that's a horrible idea. No, never. Never. So the question is, tools that do like automated penetration testing and stuff like that, they're awesome. I genuinely doubt their ability to really I think it's great. I think it's a great first line of defense. They'll hammer your sites with XSS, with SQL injection stuff, and they're going to try all the possible combinations on every field they see. But I think as we move to more and more to JS apps that communicate with APIs, I think they're going to have trouble discovering what exists, what all of them, and so on. So I think it's a great first line of defense. I don't think it's the final solution for if you're really worried about someone doing bad stuff to your site, hire an expert. That's not me. Just hire an actual expert.
And the microphone works. So another question.
Once you encrypt the cookie, are you secure from session hijacking?
No, session hijacking is the process of stealing someone's cookie and replaying it verbatim, so byte for byte, and claiming. It's like someone getting your ID and using it to buy liquor. Encrypting and signing cookies isn't a defense for that, unless you tie it to the user agent, which can also be spoofed, or to the IP, which can also be spoofed. There's really no silver bullet for a session hijack for when someone actually gets a hold. Use SSL, make sure to never have logged in traffic over HTTP. That's much better than trying to do something fancy with cookies to prevent session hijack.
You gave an example of you exploiting systems, hacking into them. Why don't you give an example of you reinventing the wheel, your biggest flaw?
Yeah, sure. So this was like 7 years ago, and I was working for a British company on a PHP code base that I wrote almost exclusively, and we were migrating to a different server, and the app just didn't work on the new server because PHP has that short tag setting, and it was off. So For those of you not familiar with PHP, you have like the arrow, the question mark, PHP. That's the open PHP block, the long one. But the short one that often works is just arrow and then question mark, so less than question mark. And for some reason on the server this was disabled. So what I did was I started the main PHP file of my app with the short tag. So if the server is configured fine, then it's working. So then I opened a block comment. So if the server is working fine, this is the start of a comment. And then inside the comment, I had the long PHP tag and the PHP die command, which says, you know, this thing is misconfigured, and then the close comment, and then the code continued. And it took me a few hours to come up with this awesome solution, and I was so happy. I presented it to my bosses. They didn't even blink. They said, good work, we solved the problem, so now when we migrate to a different server, it's gonna work, or it's gonna tell us what's wrong. This was, the weird thing was, it was just failing. So I went home from work, and like 5 hours later, as I'm getting ready to go to bed, I realized there's probably a way to ask PHP if it's enabled or not. So you can ask, like, what are your settings, dude? Do short tags work? So just use the long tag and ask it. Because this code, I was so proud of it because it was such an elegant hack. But 6 months later, I probably wouldn't know what the hell that was. So that's me reinventing the wheel. Okay, time? Okay, thank you very much.